Imagine for a second just looking up at the night sky, right? You see the faint light from all these stars that burned out, I mean, billions of years ago.
Yeah, it's a classic image.
Right, but then you realize this terrifying, kind of beautiful truth. None of it actually existed until a human ancestor looked up and, observed it roughly 70,000 years ago.
Exactly. It's a total paradigm shift.
I mean, imagine that the entire 13.8 billion year history of the cosmos is just this retroactive backstory. Like, it was only rendered into reality when biological evolution finally produced a brain capable of collapsing the wave function of the whole universe.
It completely inverts the standard cosmological model. Instead of humanity being this late arriving accidental byproduct of the universe is actually a byproduct of human consciousness.
Okay, let's unpack this. Today's deep dive is into a stack of really provocative sources. We got manifestos, texts, and these wild AI-assisted theoretical dialogues outlining a secular philosophical framework known as the Way of POE.
Or philosophy of existence, yeah.
Right. And it merges quantum mechanics with evolutionary biology and even thermodynamics to argue not just how reality functions mechanically, but what your specific literal purpose in it actually is.
And we really are dismantling the timeline of reality today. This deep dive is going to challenge everything you assume about time, biology, and honestly, your own significance in the cosmos.
So to understand how we end up rendering the universe, the sources demand we start at the absolute 0 point. And I don't mean the Big Bang, I mean the void.
Right. The Way of POE requires a really precise understanding of that initial void. In theoretical physics, absolute nothingness isn't just like an empty black container waiting to be filled with matter.
It's not just a dark room.
Exactly. It represents perfect, unbroken symmetry. So there is no time, no physical laws, no energy. But there's a fundamental rule in physics regarding perfect symmetry, which is that it is mathematically inherently unstable.
It just can't last.
Right. The absolute slightest fluctuation shatters it entirely.
And that instability generates probabilities. So we're talking about quantum fluctuations where virtual particles just flicker in and out of the vacuum.
Yes, what physicists call a sum over histories.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because quantum mechanics has that stubborn observer effect constraint. A probability wave remains just a mathematical potential. It doesn't become physically real until a conscious observer interacts with it and collapses it into, definitive reality.
Which creates a massive philosophical roadblock.
Right.
Especially if you assume the universe is a purely physical, deterministic machine.
Right, because nobody's there yet.
Exactly. But the Way of POE argues that out of the infinite shimmering haze of probabilities generated by the void's instability, one specific sum over history contained the eventual emergence of consciousness.
Okay, I'm going to bring in an analogy here because it really clarifies the mechanism perfectly. Think about playing a massive open-world video game. The computer's processor isn't actively generating the physical geometry of every single leaf in a forest 100 miles away from your character.
Because that would crash the system.
Right. It holds the code, the potential for that forest, but the physical rendering, the pixels actually firing on your screen, that only happens when your player's camera pans over to look at it.
That is a brilliant way to picture it.
Thanks. So until the observer arrives, the world is just unrendered probability to save processing power. The sources are essentially arguing that the physical universe operates on the ultimate optimization engine.
It really captures the mechanics of wave function collapse. But applying that optimization engine to the universe introduces the most jarring paradox in this entire philosophy.
Yeah, the timeline issue.
Right. The universe existed for 13.8 billion years before human consciousness evolved. So how can the cosmic rendering engine require a player that won't spawn for another 13 billion years?
It's the classic effect coming before the cause. Which brings us to retrocausality.
Yeah.
The idea that a measurement in the present can literally determine the physical state of the past.
And this isn't just science fiction. The sources lean heavily on physicist John Wheeler's delayed choice experiment to ground this in actual science.
Can you break that down? Because the cosmic scale version of this is mind-bending.
Sure. Wheeler's variation of the double-slit experiment demonstrates retrocausality perfectly. Imagine a distant quasar emitting photons billions of years ago. And between that quasar and Earth, there are two massive galaxies acting as gravitational lenses.
So they bend the arriving light.
Exactly. They bend it, offering it two distinct paths around the galaxies to reach our telescopes.
And because this is quantum mechanics, until it's measured, The light is traveling as a probability wave along both paths simultaneously, right?
Right. The key is in how we choose to measure it when it arrives on Earth today. If astronomers configure their detectors to identify exactly which path a photon took, the light behaves as a particle, meaning it must have taken only one path.
Right, but if they change the
If
detectors,
they configure the detectors to measure an interference pattern, it behaves as a wave, meaning it took both paths.
so the measurement we make on Earth, like today, dictates the physical reality of what that photon did billions of years ago. Halfway across the universe, it retroactively collapses the history of the light.
Yes. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the Way of POE scales that localized quantum effect to the entirety of the cosmos.
So the whole universe was just this fluid probability.
Exactly. The universe remained in an uncollapsed state of quantum probability for eons. It was only when early humans achieved a threshold of symbolic consciousness, roughly 70,000 years ago, that a localized observation finally occurred.
Wow.
And that initial observation echoed backward through time, snapping the entire 13.8 billion year preamble into solid deterministic reality.
That sets up what the texts call cosmic symbiosis. The universe needs us to render its existence, and we obviously need a universe to live in. We're locked in this codependent loop with reality.
It's a beautiful concept.
It is, but that symbiosis hinges entirely on that 70,000-year mark. Humans, Homo sapiens, were biologically present long before that. So what specific evolutionary trigger suddenly turned a standard-issue primate brain into a quantum rendering engine?
Well, the sources point to the Toba supervolcano eruption around 74,000 years ago as the catalyst.
Oh, right, the genetic bottleneck.
Yeah, this wasn't just a severe winter, it was an evolutionary crucible. Massive global cooling, extreme drought, and a brutal bottleneck that reduced the entire human population to perhaps a few thousand individuals.
Total survival mode.
Yeah.
But, our evolutionary trick up to that point had always been to just grow a bigger brain.
Which works until it doesn't.
Right. We hit a biological wall with that strategy because of the physical limits of the female pelvis in the birth canal. We literally couldn't birth infants with larger craniums without fatal consequences.
The selective pressure was immense. You need a drastically more capable processing unit to survive the post-Toba environment, but you have no extra physical space to expand the hardware.
So what happened?
The Way of POE posits that under this extreme metabolic and environmental stress, evolutionary adaptation turned inward. It fundamentally altered our neurochemistry at the quantum level.
Okay, I want to dig into the actual mechanics of that because the texts make a huge leap here. How exactly does biological stress trigger quantum entanglement in a primate brain?
The hypothesis outlined in the material suggests it involves the ion channels in our synapses. Normally, neural firing is treated as a classical mechanism, right? Ions physically flowing across membranes.
Just standard chemistry.
Exactly. But under the intense metabolic constraints following the Toba bottleneck, the biological pathways that utilized energy most efficiently were aggressively selected for.
Makes sense. Nature loves efficiency.
And the sources argue this efficiency crossed a threshold where the transmission of information between certain neural networks began relying on quantum tunneling.
Wait, really? So it's like upgrading a computer. When you can't make the physical hardware any bigger, you don't build a bigger box. You revolutionize the architecture. You shift from a standard processor to a quantum computer.
That's exactly it. Instead of ions physically pushing through a channel, taking up time and energy, they probabilistically appear on the other side.
That is wild.
The neural architecture became dense and optimized enough that these quantum states could be maintained without decohering in the warm, wet environment of the brain. The ions involved became quantum entangled, linking our localized neural networks directly into the foundational quantum minefield of the universe.
I mean, that is the much more robust explanation than just assuming we got generally smarter. This internal shift gave us symbolic consciousness, right? Like language, complex art, temporal awareness. All of it emerges from this quantum biological upgrade. We became the observers the universe had been waiting for.
We acquired the biological equipment necessary to interface with the fundamental probabilities of reality.
Okay, but let me challenge this central premise. If human beings possess these advanced quantum brains holding the universe together, I mean, looking at the evening news or just a history book paints a very different picture.
It does get pretty dark.
Yeah, war, systemic cruelty, racism. That behavior doesn't scream advanced cosmic observer. It screams violent ape.
The philosophy doesn't shy away from that contradiction. In fact, it builds an entire behavioral framework around it called the blind spot.
The blind spot.
Yeah, it's our profound lack of awareness regarding how thoroughly our primitive biology continues to puppet our actions. Because remember, for over 100,000 years prior to the Toba bottleneck, we survived strictly via primate instincts.
Meaning the older, deeper parts of the brain, like the R complex and the limbic system, were completely running the show.
Entirely. We were governed by status striving and what ethologists call fixed action patterns, or FAPs.
FAPs. Yeah.
These are hardwired automatic behavioral loops triggered by specific environmental stimuli. Aggression when territory is challenged, forming strict in-groups to hoard resources, displaying physical dominance.
And achieving symbolic consciousness 70,000 years ago didn't just magically delete those primitive brain structures. We just layered a high-powered quantum prefrontal cortex right on top of a lizard brain.
That's the tragic tension of the human condition, according to POE. We still experience those primitive fixed action patterns, but now we use our advanced symbolic consciousness to construct elaborate, rational-sounding justifications for them.
Wow.
Ethnocentrism, racism, and war are really just the ancient primate drives for resource monopolization, dressed up in modern geopolitical ideologies.
So the goal isn't to pretend we don't have these primal drives, but to actively shine a light on the blind spot and use that advanced prefrontal cortex to consciously override the FAPs.
Exactly.
Which brings us to how the Way of POE maps moral philosophy directly onto the laws of physics.
And what's fascinating here is how this framework bridges science and ethics. The sources utilize symmetric thermodynamics as the ultimate moral compass.
How does that work?
Well, in physics, you have entropy pulling systems toward disorder, randomness, and decay, and you have synergy pulling them toward complexity, self-organization, and order.
Entropy is evil, synergy is good.
Precisely. The philosophy argues that because our quantum-entangled consciousness is the absolute apex of biological complexity, humanity is literally composed of synergy.
Therefore, our cosmic function, our literal purpose, is to act as an engine for synergy while pushing back against entropy. It takes morality entirely out of the realm of subjective cultural debate and makes it a measurable thermodynamic vector.
Yes, if a behavior increases disorder, isolation, or destruction, like violence or prejudice, it is mathematically entropic. It's objectively wrong within the framework of the universe.
Right, but if it builds complexity, connection, and cooperation like love, it's synergistic and objectively right.
It gives you a highly precise, physics-based tool for decision-making. Every choice is either pushing the universe toward decay or pulling it toward magnificent complexity.
That framework applies enormous pressure to our daily choices, but it also scales up to the ultimate destiny of the cosmos. Because if we are the localized agents of synergy, actively fighting the decay of the universe, the obvious question is, where's our backup?
You'd think there would be others.
Right. The universe is unimaginably huge. Are we really fighting this thermodynamic war alone?
The Way of POE offers a stark answer to the Fermi paradox, which is the eerie silence of space. We are absolutely alone. There are no extraterrestrial observers.
I need to pause on that. Claiming we are the sole conscious species in an infinite universe is a massive statistical anomaly. How do the sources justify that mechanically?
They tie it back to the mechanism of wave function collapse we discussed earlier. The argument is that the first localized consciousness to observe the universe retroactively collapses the entire cosmic history into the specific sum-over history that produced them.
Oh, I see.
By rendering the universe to align with our specific evolutionary timeline, we locked out the probabilities that would have led to other conscious observers. It is a one-time event per universe.
So it's a first-come, first-served rendering. Once we collapse the waves, the parameters of the universe were set to our existence. But the sources point to actual cosmological data to support this, don't they? The anomalies in the cosmic microwave background.
They do. They cite the quadrupole and octupole anomalies. Astrophysicists sometimes refer to this as the axis of evil.
Sounds ominous.
It does. But when we map the cosmic microwave background, which is the oldest light in the universe, the afterglow of the Big Bang, we find highly unexpected alignments. The temperature fluctuations on the largest observable scales mysteriously align almost perfectly with the ecliptic plane of our own solar system.
Which, under standard cosmological models, shouldn't happen, right? The universe is supposed to be isotropic, looking the same in every direction without any special orientation or center.
Yet, the foundational radiation of the universe seems geographically oriented around Earth's path through space. While mainstream physics debates the cause of this anomaly, the Way of POE interprets this alignment as the physical fingerprint of the wave function collapse.
It's the point of origin.
Earth is the literal fulcrum where the probability wave snapped into deterministic reality.
If we are the sole fulcrum of the universe, then everything is riding on us. The thermodynamic battle between entropy and synergy isn't just a metaphor. It's the mechanical function of reality. So where does this cosmic tug-of-war end?
It drives toward what the sources call the omega point. It's a concept inspired by the French philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. But to grasp this, we have to recognize the philosophy's stance on time symmetry.
Time symmetry, okay.
We perceive the forward arrow of time, the direction in which matter evolves and ages. But the framework suggests that dark matter and dark energy, which constitute the vast majority of the universe's mass energy budget, operate on a reversed arrow of time.
Meaning time moving backward from the future to the present, maintaining a thermodynamic tension with our forward-moving matter.
Right. And as humanity continually chooses synergy over entropy, as we integrate, complexify, and evolve our consciousness, we pull the material universe toward ultimate complexity.
So the omega point is the end goal.
It is the hypothesized apex of this process. It is a singularity where the universe reaches a state of maximum unified complexity, perfectly balanced against maximum entropy.
The ultimate symmetry.
And just as the absolute symmetry of the initial void was unstable and shattered to create our universe, the perfect symmetry of the omega point will trigger a new instability. It will be the explosive conclusion of this reality and the genesis of the next. Our ultimate destiny is to consciously shepherd the universe through its life cycle to trigger its rebirth.
I want to ground this epic sci-fi scale destiny back into the reality of you, the listener, navigating your life tomorrow. Because knowing that we are marching toward the omega point reframes everything.
That changes the mundane completely.
Exactly. The mundane interactions you have at work, the way you resolve a conflict with a friend, these aren't trivial moments. Every time you consciously override a primitive primate impulse, every time you choose to build understanding instead of creating chaos, you are physically injecting synergy into the cosmos. You are doing the job you evolved to do.
Your daily choices are the micromechanics driving the macroevolution of the universe.
The Way of POE argues that from the unstable void, a universe of probabilities emerged, waiting billions of years until extreme biological stress forced human neural networks to utilize quantum mechanics. And that architectural leap gave us the consciousness required to look up, observe the stars, and retroactively render reality.
And now, armed with an objective, thermodynamic moral compass, it's solely our responsibility to complexify this cosmos until it's ready to be reborn.
It places the ultimate burden and the ultimate meaning squarely on human consciousness. Which brings us back to you. The simple act of taking the time to listen to this deep dive, pushing your boundaries and expanding your knowledge, that is a literal act of synergy. By satisfying your curiosity, you are actively fighting entropy.
Complexifying your own mind is fulfilling your cosmic function.
We'll leave you with this final thought to mull over. If the physics of the Way of POE dictate that conscious observation is the engine that pulls possibilities into reality, what happens to the parts of your own life that you refuse to look at?
Oh, that is a profound question.
Right. The difficult conversations you avoid, the hidden passions you ignore, the potential futures you're too afraid to acknowledge. Are those personal possibilities left unrendered in the void, just waiting for the courage of your observation?
A possibility unobserved remains forever a ghost.
Keep looking. Until next time.